Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur Audacity. Today, I am here with a very special guest, Lisa, and I have been looking forward to doing this episode with her for quite some time. When she sent me through her application to come on the podcast, I was so excited. So, Lisa, please give us an intro, who you are, what you do, what your business is.
Thank you, Angie, for having me. I've been excited to jump on here as well. So my name is Lisa Keevil. I'm an entrepreneur, thought leader speaker, and I'm the founder of Recreate and Rise. Now, Recreate and Rise is a business that's been designed specifically to help women who have gone through a midlife divorce to recreate their next chapter. It's quite like Grey Divorce. Globally, it's huge, but nothing exists for women beyond the mess. So I could see that gap, and I've created that gap. I've stepped into that gap, I guess. I've created the answer to that gap. In short, is myself.
I love that. And I think that's really important because a lot of the time it is what do we do after the mess, and divorce is a very messy subject. I've never been married, so I can't really comment on it, or been divorced, obviously. But, what are some of, you've gone into this knowing that there's that gap, which I think is beautiful. And I know so many of our listeners are going to resonate with this because I'm sure that they've gone through their own kind of journey and process with this. And you have a start and a stop time in life sometimes. And, every rejection is a redirection is something that I really resonate with. So, I'd love to know more about how you identified the gap and, maybe throughout, do you have a bit of a backstory that you want to give us a little bit of a detail on how you kind of all of it come about?
Got to recreate and rise. So, Angie, I was married for 30 years.
Yep.
And in 2020, my marriage fell apart. And I was a shattered person. And what I found was that, as I started to walk through the process of moving through, like after the mess had gone, when I started to move through my new life, I kind of realized, hang on a moment, I'm actually going through a process. I realized I started stepping through a process, and a lot of that would have come from my background where I've always created frameworks and processes in corporate places. And as I started stepping through, I'm making it sound simple, but it's not as simple as it was. What I realized was I was looking at other women that had gone through a divorce, and they weren't moving through what I was moving through. And then the more I delved into it, I realized that there's a process that needs to be created. Society actually doesn't have a process for what happens beyond the mess. And then when I sat back and looked at the impacts to myself, a divorce woman in her 50s, it's a grey divorce. I don't know if you've heard the terminology grey divorce. Grey divorce is the divorce beyond 50. When I sat back and realized how significant the impacts were to a woman in her 50s, I kind of sat there and knew that I went through a process. I realized it's an underserved demographic of people. And I also saw that I had the answer. And that's where Recreate and Rise started. And it's actually growing. The more I get into Recreate and Rise, it's growing. I'm seeing bigger gaps globally. And I'm really excited actually to step into the space.
Yeah, I love that. I'm excited for you because it's a massive thing. And if you look at when we go through this turmoil and these events that really shift and they change everything, I can only imagine what you would have gone through and how that would have just thrown a complete spanner in your life where you needed to change directions and everything, and if you said something about there's nothing for women coming out the other end. And, I think it's probably because society has set us up that you get married and that's it.
That's it.
They don't ever factor in any changing variables. So, I love what you're working on.
it's where society, if I can just sort of, can
Yeah,
I
jump in.
elaborate a bit? If I can
Jump
elaborate a
in.
bit more. So society doesn't understand the impacts of divorce. And I will openly say when I speak that I didn't understand the impacts of divorce. You don't understand them because society is quite ignorant about them because they don't ask. People just ask when you go through a divorce, who got the house? Are you okay? They actually just ask the surface questions. They don't actually look at what goes a bit deeper. And being divorced in your 50s, after I was married for 30 years, so then I had to actually find a new identity. And all these women are having to do the same thing. You've been a wife, you've been the other half of someone. A lot of people say that they're like the other half. You've been a mother in a household, and suddenly you're a single person. The identity is one of the biggest, craziest parts of the whole thing, and society doesn't understand that. And then society also, can't see the other impacts. Like there's financial impacts, there's you lose your friends, like it's new friendships. The list is very, very long, and that's what Recreate and Rise. I've created it to fill that gap for these women so they don't go through what I went through without a process, documented process for them.
Mm. I love that. I love a documented process. It's the business improvement side of me coming out.
That's it.
It's so helpful for the brain, though, because when we know what the steps are and we can see, okay, this is step one, and it's hard when you go through something to take the first step. And I absolutely love what you're working on because I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to map out that process because so many people, unless you've worked in an industry or had positions where you do understand frameworks, process improvement, strategy, you're left just sitting there kind of going, okay, what the hell do I do? I can't do anything. Like you just can't see that clear path forward. So, what was it like for you going through this? And at what point after your divorce did you go, okay, cool, I found this process and women need this and I'm going to set it up? Like, how did you transition into the business aspect of it?
So 2020 was a terrible year. That was the year that the marriage broke down. And then 2021, I started to find my feet. And I think it was about the end of 2022 where I went, well, hang on, I've got something here. But I didn't know exactly what I had. I just knew it was a program. I had step by steps. And then I actually went on an adventure. I was from the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. I left the Hunter Valley to go on an adventure, moved to the northern beaches of Sydney. And I thought, I'll be back. I told my children, I'll be back. I'll be back in a year. But I didn't go back. When I got to the northern beaches, I kind of found myself growing. It was really, someone said to me, like a flower blooms, you get to where you're supposed to be and you start to bloom. And once I got here, I really could see, as I as a person started to grow, I could see how important the programs were. And it was where are we? We're in 2026, got to get where we are. It was about in 2024 when I met people, I just started to say, I'm going to create programs for women. I've started, didn't know exactly what it looked like, but I'd started. And it was November 2024 where I started to deliver the programs to small groups of women. And then I just went, I can't just give it to one woman because the grey divorce globally is just one of the biggest growing, when I say this word, phenomenon. I say that word slowly, I don't say it a lot, but it's a global phenomenon. So anyway, in November of 24, I decided I've got to get out and I've got to start helping people. And so that was where I went and did a boot camp, Speakers Institute, learn how to stand on stage because I knew I had to release this information to the world. And then when I went to an Aaron Sansoni, which I think you are familiar with who Aaron Sansoni
Yes,
is, one
very
of
much so.
Australia's biggest entrepreneurs. And I went along to some of his Entrepreneur Summit, and then I knew I had to see more. I went to one of his Empire Mastery, and I sat there and I went, that's it. This is where I'm stepping into business. And, I got on the stage with Aaron and I promised Aaron I would resign from work on the following Monday. I went to work on the following Monday, didn't tender the resignation, but I got straight onto the manager and said, I'm resigning from work next week. And that was it. That was where that was May last year, only 12 months ago, that I just went, I'm stepping up, I'm stepping out into the world of entrepreneurship.
Oh, I love that. I love that. You're giving me goosebumps with your story. It's so cool because I can only imagine, and I've gone through my own journey, so I can relate to that when you're feeling that fear of staying in a position where it's comfortable, you've got security, job security, financial stability, and when you go out into the unknown, you're really stepping through this, I want to say like a portal. You step through this portal into the unknown and it's scary as hell. And on the other side is all this fear and this discomfort, and it's scary as hell. But when you do finally have that, okay, that initiative and I'm going to do it. And sometimes all it takes is someone to put it back on you and say, all right, Monday, you're going to resign. So what was that like? Because, making that commitment, like you made that commitment with Aaron Sansoni on the stage, right? And then that Monday you pulled your boss aside and said that. What was that period like? Because I know, and I'm feeling that you would have been tossing back and forth going, yeah, I'm going to do it. No, I'm going to, yep. What was that like? And how did you just dive into it?
I was excited. Okay, so I was on the stage in front of 500 people. So it was like, I've committed to 500 people that I'm going to resign. And what I loved about it, now anyone that's gone through a divorce might be able to relate to this. Since my divorce, I was my own cheerleader. So it's like I motivate, I tell myself what to do, be good, Lisa, do this. And to actually resign and having that fear, it was really hard to push myself to step out of that fear and resign, even though I knew I wanted to. So the edge of being on stage in front of 500 people and Aaron Sansoni, just to say, I'm going to resign, I've really got to be honest and say that was the little push. It was like when I bungee jumped years ago and the man pushed me off the ledge. It was exactly the same. It was like, push, there's the push. But once I had made that commitment, I was so excited inside. I didn't know, like I've got a few fears that I had, like money and can I, and we'll talk about that later. But the excitement, it was just excitement of Lisa, go, do it.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And this is part of being an entrepreneur, right? It's diving into the unknown and diving headfirst into the mess and seeing what happens. And yeah, it's so scary, but it's also so exciting. And that's one thing, and the inspiration for this podcast come about because so many people have a story. And when you do actually have the courage to be bold and be audacious and dive into starting a business and becoming an entrepreneur, it is so scary. We see all these success stories of everyone and they're like, oh yeah, now I'm turning over millions. But it's like, okay, but how did you get to that? Because it's not just one day I'm going to wake up and like, yeah, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to ditch that hat and put something else on. So you mentioned just a moment ago about your fears and one particularly the can I. Now, what can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
So the fears, like, can I do this? Can I execute? I've always had side hustles. So I always knew I had potential to be an entrepreneur. I stayed in the safety of business, like in the corporate world where I got my paycheck every pay, but I always had side hustles. So it was like, can I actually do this? And the more I looked at what Recreate and Rise could be, and of course, Aaron Sansoni, I went in there with I thought my bar was here. And of course, I meet that man. And he's like, here's the bar right up here, Lisa. And so then there's that fear of, can I? But then I notice my fears have changed, say, in the last 12 months. They just keep changing, but I don't have that can I fear anymore. I have the I can, which has kind of flipped the fear. But there are lots of different fears that have come and gone, like money fear. One of my first fears was strange, and it was disappointing my children in a way. Do you want me to elaborate? Because other women may resonate with
Please
this.
do.
So when I got divorced, it was me that left my husband, or my ex-husband. I felt that I disappointed my children, and I felt that I'd left them. And they were adult children, 3 adult children. But like myself, they also had dreams of what they thought a family would be like when they had their children, and there'd be, their mum and dad would be grandparents. And then when I moved to the Northern Beaches and sort of said, I'm not coming back, I really had a fear that they would then say, Mum left the family, she's moved to the Northern Beaches, and now she's actually committing all of her time to helping women recreate and rise. So I kind of had a fear that they would think I was deserting them, because I was known as smother. I was sort of a real hands-on kind of mum that was always in their face. And I guess that was a really big fear. But again, that's bless Aaron Sansoni. When I was on the stage, my son was actually there. It was Mother's Day last year. And Aaron got my son to stand up and say, this is, like I said, the fear in front of 500 people. And my son alleviated that fear by saying, no, we're proud of Mum. We just want her to do what she's got to do. So then that fear was sent. But then there was another fear of, as an entrepreneur, it's just like, this is going to be too big. Can I do this? Do I have the right product? Will the customers come? And when they come, what if millions come? So the fears change. Did you find that, Angie? The fears change, don't they? They change as you grow.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely. I'm just thinking of like some of the fears. Man, my fears changed from this morning to yesterday. It's such a journey. You're going through these ups and downs, and then you have these moments of, oh yeah, everything's working and everything's going good, and then a spanner will come in, and you're like, whoa, what is this? Didn't expect this. What about? So it's really being able to be agile and kind of flow with everything that comes in. And yeah, those challenges they do face, they do show face in so many different ways, and things that you're not always prepared for. And something I've really loved is, I'm lucky enough that I get to have wicked guests on my show like yourself, and we get to talk about this because, we all face it, no matter how high up we go, even the likes of, Aaron Sansoni himself, like he's faced all of these things. So we've all got those things that we navigate through. And, I want to help other people kind of work through that and be like, okay, no, firstly, it's normal, because I think we forget that, entrepreneurship, it should just be like, oh, great, I'm going to start a business. It's going to be great. And then this will be fun. Not reality. It's, everything will happen. I'll have 1 million people at my door next week. Great. And funny, actually, I was watching a reel on Instagram yesterday about a cookie shop that went viral on social media, and then it impacted their business because they had so many people show up suddenly trying to buy their product, but they kept running out of all their stock. They ended up having to change their complete structure of their business and what they provided because they went so big so quick, everything can change really quite suddenly as well. And then the fears change, and then it's, yep, okay, I'm dealing with this. Oh, okay, the kids are relaxed. They don't think less of me. Great. Cool. What about this other thing that's just popped up? And like, oh my God. So I love that you touched on, you were worried about what your family was going to think. And, I think that's such an important aspect of being an entrepreneur, because it is that fear and that judgment of letting other people down, and what will they think? They think that I'm not showing up as a mum. as a grandma, like, like all of these things play into it. But tying back into, because I feel like this is, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I feel like you're working in your obligation, because I can see how passionate you are about Recreate and Rise. And I stand with you on that. Like, I think it's a beautiful, beautiful movement that you're doing. And, what's it like knowing that you've got the support from your family going into working in something that is your obligation? And, how does that tie into when those fears come up? Like, where does it slot in? Because, yeah, I'm just going to leave that with you.
Well, not my mother and father, okay. There's no acceptance from them, but that's, we'll just put those cards on the table. So anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur who have parents that are in their late 80s, you don't always have to tell them what you're doing. Oh, now I've gone on a tangent. Forgot where I was headed with that. So, but no, where your family slots in, my children now are like, my two sons are entrepreneurs, and I have a daughter as well. Not just, sorry, I take that back. She works for a council, so she has a beautiful career herself, but she's chosen to, like I did for many years, just like her mum, play the safe game. But my sons now are so supportive. And what I love about being an entrepreneur at my age, I'm 59 now. So being an entrepreneur at 59, I delight in having sons as entrepreneurs that I can actually delve down on their experiences, because their experiences are different with the age groups. So it's quite a luxury to be able to reach out and have that, not only the support from them, but the support in the way of their mind frame or mindset at their age, what they see that they can empower me with. And then as well, I get to empower them right back with the wisdom that I have and the ideas that I see. So it's quite a luxury to sort of have that availability with my family. And of course, my daughter, she really supports her mum all the way. But it was very important to me. It may not be to some, but it was very important to me. And now that I have that support, I'll never, ever look back at that fear again. I'll just, carry that with me, that I've got their support, not mum and dad's. Oh, but
Yeah.
the children, yes.
That's beautiful. And I think it highlights a really good point, because not everyone will support you on the journey. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that as well, because when you do go into entrepreneurship, it might be your mum and dad in their late 80s that are not supportive, or, one of my guests, her partner wasn't actually supportive, and he kept encouraging her to go back into the corporate world and get a stable job. And, and listening to how she navigated that, it was so interesting, because we do have these fears that are projections from other people, because if they haven't done it, we're very fearful of stuff. We're fearful of the unknown, and that's our brain's wiring, right?
Yes.
So how we navigate entrepreneurship when there's so much uncertainty is really important. But yeah, what strategies do you, or would you advise for people who maybe have, your parents is a little bit different, I think, but say it was like your partner, or so, what would you do if one of your kids wasn't as supportive? Like, how do you think you would have navigated that?
Guess we would have had a little chat of some degree, but I think the less said, don't tell people everything. That is a really big lesson. And you would know that yourself, Angie, from if you want to share, but unless the person's an entrepreneur as well, they don't understand. And it is similar, like, to being divorced. You've really got to put the shoes on, wear the shoes, to know what it's like, to know what navigating being an entrepreneur. So I tell people limited information. They don't need to know what I'm doing. However, if I'm in the company of people that are entrepreneurs, it's fabulous to bounce your ideas and to tell people what you're doing, because they're genuinely feeling excitement for you.
Yeah.
So
100%.
you would find that yourself.
I love that point. You are so correct. You are so correct, because, for me, I'm quite young still. And talking to people my age about what I'm doing and some of the companies and structures that I'm setting up, I've just watched it go straight over their head. Or I get those projections of the fears, or like, oh, you should probably not be doing this. Like, get a job. Like, my family's like, they're super supportive, but they're also like, maybe what about this? What are you going to? And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it, guys. Like, it's the limited information. It's the limited information, but some people can't actually handle it and hear it. And when they don't know, it's really hard because you want to explain and we'll say, no, okay, well, if you do this, like I've got this structure and this part moves this bit, but unless the other person, is an entrepreneur, it has some like business sense, they won't understand it at the level, and you won't be able to talk about it with the strength and the pride that I know that Recreate and Rise brings for you, because I can see it in you, like, and I think that's wicked. And I know for me, when I'm around the people that I can talk about my big ambitious goals with, it energizes you. But yeah, you've really got to know when to, I hate to say turn it down, but and maybe it's not turning it down, because I don't believe in turning it down, but it's just not just quiet, just not saying anything.
It's like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Nope. Because people can't handle it. So linking on to that, what would you say to someone who is on their journey? They're maybe they're at the point of, they haven't dove into entrepreneurship completely. They're still trying to stay in those safety nets. Like, how would you kind of coach them to dive into that fear and let go of the, I don't want to say criticism, but let go of the fear and judgment of others on the journey?
I guess one of the first things is that I found, when you're telling people to believe in yourself, they need to, that is one of the first things. They need to believe in themselves. And whilst don't panic if you don't have all the answers. Like, I knew that Recreate and Rise had to be designed, but I didn't have all the answers. So you don't need all the answers. You just need to trust yourself. Have fears, as we've mentioned. Fears are normal, but step in to what you want to do, because you only live once. Like, there's only this lifetime. You might as well embrace the lifetime that you've been given here, and don't look back so much. Don't look and don't compare. So there's quite a few different things. Don't compare, like what you just said. People, they'll start a business and go, I've made $2 million in 6 months. It's like, okay, do not compare yourself to others. Perhaps have that as a North Star and know that's where you're going and that's what you want. But don't be hard on yourself if you don't get there in the amount of time that you thought you could. If it takes longer, let it be. Just keep going. Keep going, because you'll get there.
I think that's awesome. And you're so right, because you just have to keep getting back up. And one thing, I'll bring this in. I wasn't sure if I was ever going to bring this into an episode, but I was having dinner with someone who's founded a few different, he's founded a lot of different companies, but one of them, their annual revenue, it's worth over 2.2 billion. And just a weird meeting in a lift situation from a networking thing. We ended up out at dinner and it was really cool. I asked him what his opinion of ego was. And before I kind of dive into what he said, I'd love to get your opinion on ego and how ego ties into entrepreneurship.
That is an interesting question. Ego. I don't know. Hang on. You've got me on a question. I haven't been asked that question before, so I'm glad you brought it into this conversation.
This is
you actually do. You need ego. Right? You actually, yeah, it's like no script. You do need ego. You have to have a level of ego to actually be an entrepreneur. So I kind of have the sass to sort of say, I'm going to be a public figure because I know what I've got is good. So I need ego in that regard. So with Recreate and Rise, if I didn't have ego, I'd just go, Oh, well, I think they're good. Are they good? But because I have ego, I'm so confident and trusting of myself that what I've got is fabulous. So you do need ego. But if I may add, I've come across, 'cause I've been in the mentoring program and come across so many entrepreneurs, and some of them, the money that they're bringing in and the amazing projects they're doing, they are the ones that you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't notice the amazement. Their egos are very, they, they they don't walk around with the ego on their shoulder saying, "Look at me." They're actually quite, yeah, yeah, I did that. So I guess internally you need the ego. You need ego to do it, but once you're doing it, you actually don't need to display it and say, "Look at me." Um,
I love that answer. That is a beautiful answer. And you know what's funny is he said basically the same thing. So you've got to have an ego. That were his words. And you really do, because it's your ego that will keep getting back up when you get knocked down, and you
mhm,
will get knocked down on the journey. You will face hardship. There'll be ups, there'll be downs, there'll be moments of joy and everything's going great. But then there's also going to be times where it's just, there's turbulence and there's lots of it and shit's shaking and you're like, oh my God. Sorry. um, but you do have to have that ego and that ability to get back up and bounce back up and keep going, so yeah, I loved how you just framed that. And tying into your point about, being really humble and not when people, it's like that really cocky ego and it's just like, oh yeah, like, look at me, look at me. But, some of the people who have done some really incredible things that they've got an ego, absolutely, but they're very humble about it. So
mhm.
can you dive into a little bit more on that? Have you had any experiences or any conversations where you've seen something that you think the listeners might get some info from?
Uh, I guess I would just say have an ego, know your strengths, know what you're good at, know your subject, and if you fall down, retain the ego. Uh, don't let it ruin you. Just when your ego, I guess, I'm not sure if men, I have spoken to quite a few men, and men, it impacts them more than women, the ego, if something doesn't go according to plan. But if it doesn't go according to plan, keep your ego strong. And yes, when you do hit the big time, it's actually quite, I find it really attractive and charismatic in a person that has achieved the big time, but humble. That was the word I was looking for before. Thank you. But they're humble. They don't show it. They don't walk around with a big flag that says, "Look at me. I've achieved this and this." Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Because what I've found, and, I read a lot of like psychology and behavioral stuff and neuroscience and the rest of it. And when you do have your ego and you've got that confidence, confidence is actually quiet. We
Mm.
don't,
Yeah.
when you see people walking around and they need to puff their chest up and they need to put everything out and on display, a lot of the time it ties back into an insecurity, and it's actually like they have that inner disbelief that they can achieve what they're
Mm.
achieving, and they've got to
Yeah.
portray out this external, or they portray everything out to get external validation, when you can give your own self your validation, and that keeps you in that place of humble. You've got ego, absolutely, because you need it, it's important, but it keeps you humble, and you're like, okay, I've got the confidence, I can move through this. And, I'd love to hear more about what, because on your journey, you've faced a lot of setbacks, if I may. And I'd
Yes.
love to know how or what you kind of channeled within yourself to get back up and get back on the horse and keep going. Because on the journey, we go through those moments.
So the journey with being an entrepreneur, it, I'll set that aside, but my own journey beyond divorce, it was a hard journey. I found it very hard because my future that I had envisaged since I was sort of 18 years old was just gone. And it's funny you asked me this question because I have something that I just love. And I do share this sometimes. So as a child, I used to run and I was never that good, but I always got to the state. I was always happy. that I got to the state, it was 800 and 1,500 meters. My father would always stand on the sidelines and call, "Go, Flash, go." And that was his way of giving me encouragement to push a bit harder, to know I could do it, to know I was doing my best. And when I went through my marriage breakdown, I actually laid in bed. I found it hard to get out of bed quite often and do simple tasks. And I openly will speak about that because women need to kind of not think it's just them. It is hard. And I remembered my dad's words. So I started saying, "Go, Lisa, go," not "Go, Flash, go." So I changed it to "Go, Lisa, go." And it became it was my encouragement to get out of bed. It was my encouragement to do something. But when I actually did something amazing, it turned from, "Come on, go, Lisa, go, do it," to "Go, Lisa, go." It was like a war cry. And I guess,
Yeah.
and I do teach people, I call it GOLG, but it just hasn't taken off, which is GOLG, "Go, Lisa, go."
Yeah.
So it was something, and I do tell, I let people know about "Go, Lisa, go," because it's so simple. And I use it now sometimes, like even as in my role as an entrepreneur, because we haven't touched on this, where you're constantly stepping up and out of your comfort zone. So even now I use it in a different way. It's like, "Go, Lisa, go, do it. Go, Lisa, go." Yeah.
Ah,
So "Go,
I
Lisa,
love
go."
that. I love that. That's beautiful. Go, Lisa, go. Yeah,
Go.
that's cool. And sometimes you need that little mantra to say to yourself to just,
Yeah.
and you can hear it in the tone of your voice when you're like, kind of, okay, we're diving into this. It's
So,
like,
so listeners can do it so easy. Just pop your name in there. If you
yeah,
go Sally, go Michael, go. So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
just steal
No,
that
I think that's
idea. It's
awesome.
simple.
Yeah. No, because it is like it's terrifying when we're stretching ourselves out into a new, different space and really putting yourself out there. And you just touched on it a moment ago. So I think it was time we dive into what it's like when you are transitioning. Because like you're like, cool, I'm going to do this thing, and then you get the thing, and you're like, great. Now the next thing, and you're like, oh, okay, go, Lisa, go. Like, how do you navigate that? And what do you say to people who are on that thing? Because sometimes stuff happens quickly and sometimes stuff happens slowly. So, sometimes you might have a little bit more time to prepare and feel almost not, I don't want to say ready because you're never really ready, but sometimes you do feel a little bit, okay, I've had a bit more time to kind of prep myself and I've got my running shoes on and I'm ready. And sometimes you're like out the door, you haven't even got your shoes on. Like, how do you navigate that?
How do you navigate "Go, Lisa, go"? I think even the negatives, if I go to a negative, because a lot of people will relate to this, at the start of this year, I had ideas. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And of course, society haven't caught up to the fact that you can recreate your next chapter. It's a new thing that I've got to educate society about. So I had these great ideas that I was going to put out at the start of the year. I put them out. I guess my ego could have been crushed, but they fell flat. And it was just like, come on, go, Lisa, go. But because I've been like in the corporate world so long, I was used to pivoting. But it was just funny to sort of see that pushing yourself out, getting yourself through those fears. Like I put something out that I thought was fabulous, fell flat. So it's like, okay, back to the drawing board. But if I go to a positive point of view, I have fears so often. Like I've applied for speaking. There's some great speaking gigs over in the US, and there looks like one's going to come off, and it's huge. And that's going to be a "Go, Lisa, go" moment. But for like any entrepreneurs that are listening, you constantly are stepping out of your comfort zone. You can't stay in it. You've got to get up, move. And as the goalpost moves, the comfort zone gets bigger. But you won't, on most occasions, I don't think you'll grow into the entrepreneur you can be if you don't step up and step out of that comfort zone. So go, Lisa, go. Go, Angie, go.
I love it. I love it. And you're so right, because we don't change when we're comfortable.
No.
I have a thing that I say to myself: when I get complacent, I fail. And as soon as I, because I'm working on a lot of things, and then if I kind of feel like, I don't want to say if I take my foot off the gas, but it kind of feels like you're like, okay, the ship's running, it's all good. And you kind of like, yeah, and then you do just, get a little bit comfortable, and then something just, like a spanner flies off or something happens, but then something will slip. So, we need to be adapting and pushing ourselves and keeping ourselves engaged and keeping ourselves out of the comfort zone so we can stretch and aspire to become the best that we can be,
Yes.
because, entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. And I totally understand that. But, when you do dive into this journey, it is so exciting about the person that you become throughout.
Yes.
Like if you, I'm going to change course for a moment, because I would love to get your thoughts on what you would say to you before you started a business, or even maybe a younger version of you.
The younger version of me, I always had side hustles. I mentioned earlier, I always had side
Yeah.
hustles. Now, one of them was a marriage celebrant. I've been a marriage celebrant for 16 years. Not everyone knows that because I'm now in the divorce space. And I was a marriage celebrant for 16 years and I became a marriage celebrant. So it was a side hustle. When the legislation changed many years ago, and I waited for it to change to have the opportunity to become one. So as soon as legislation changed, I jumped in. I got my qualifications. I got approval from the federal government, became a celebrant. And you know what? To this day, I should have jumped ship from my comfortable role and become a marriage celebrant, because I did it part-time. I did it small. I was in big demand because I'm quite good at telling stories. So I was in demand, but I actually I didn't follow my dream, and I didn't follow what I should have done. So I guess my younger self, even though it's, I guess, 16 years ago, that's a younger self. I should have jumped. So don't go the easy path. Jump. Well, you only live once. So I should have, if I had have taken that path, my role, I guess I wouldn't be with Recreate and Rise. So that's not a good thing. But had I would have been living a much more, I guess, luxurious life for the children. I just needed that little bit of bravery to say, I can and do it.
Wow, that's really cool. That is really cool. Because we often hear people say, I wish I started sooner. I wish I did this sooner. And, I love traveling, and I talk to everyone, love it. Love a conversation, no matter who it is. I'll talk to whatever. And I talk to a lot of people when I'm traveling, obviously, because I travel by myself mainly. And when I'm on these little ventures and maybe I'm in like shops or things, and everyone's like, oh, you're Australian. Like, where are you? What are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm traveling. And they're like, oh, is it just you? And when I say that, like, yes. And I get a lot of comments, particularly from people who are older than me. And they're like, wow, that's so brave. Like, I could have never done that. And yeah, I think just stepping through the fear of, and just, taking the risk and doing it, like when things feel right, like, we have to lean into that, because so many people are like, oh, I wanted to do this, but they never acted on it. And then they go through this journey and they get to the end of their life, or they get to, further on in their life. And now it's like, should have done this so much sooner. Why didn't I? So, that is such a gap, and we all face it, right? Because we don't want to be uncomfortable.
No, we
Our
don't.
brains are wired to be
I
comfortable.
know. I
We
know.
want to be
Yeah.
safe. We want to be secure.
Well, I had 500 people that I promised, on a microphone that I would resign from work. But
Yeah.
I guess what
Yeah.
was highlighted at that, I think you touched on the word obligation before, and my obligation wasn't to be the best marriage celebrant. I can see why I didn't jump there. My obligation now is to help women, because marriage is beautiful and happy, and there's many other people to do that, but not many people have got the Recreate and Rise. So yeah, the obligation to jump in and do it. Yeah,
Mm.
it's one of those
And they
things.
don't, but hopefully Lisa. I know that I've taken a lot from this. We are inspiring them to right now with the conversation. And, like your journey has been incredible. It's been really, really cool to, be able to do this interview with you and chat and just have some fun and like learn about who you are and how you got to where you are. Because, you know, if you are at a point in your life where you should have taken the risk back then, but you didn't, sometimes there's a reason, right? I'm a big believer that
Yeah.
everything happens for a reason. And as you said, now you get to work in your obligation, which is working with Recreate and Rise. And if you had gone down the marriage celebrant path back then, this wouldn't have unfolded. So everything happens. And, one thing I always say is we got to accept reality. Right now we are where we're at. What's happened in the past has happened in the past. Like what we have is the future. So what do we need to do now? So if I should have done something 20 years ago, but I didn't, there was a reason, and now is the time to do it. So, I think people need to give themselves a little bit of grace and a bit of peace to say like, okay, cool. Shoulda, coulda, woulda, didn't, doesn't matter. Here we are going forward. Like, what am I going to do? And I'd love for more people to take more risks and dive into business and, work in their obligation, because it's such an exciting journey when you do lean into that, and then you go through these periods of growth. And I think it's just like, I find it really fun, but I'm also like super type A personality that's like got to have all of the things going.
You're not a Capricorn, are you?
No, I'm a Scorpio. Yeah, it's a wild ride, but it's really exciting. So one question that I ask all of my guests is, what does Audacity mean to you? And Lisa, I'm excited for your answer.
Oh, Audacity. So the
No
list is
pressure.
so long. She's excited. Let's make sure it's exciting. So I did think you were going to ask this question, but to me, Audacity is the audacity to leave work at 58 to say, I'm not retiring, when everyone thinks you're going to shrink. You actually know you're going to grow. I've got the audacity to know that I have a lot of wisdom now, and also the audacity to know that my experiences are going to help others. Like, that's audacity. So much confidence and audacity that what I have is for others. And yeah, I think that's audacity. Taking risks at 58 and going, that's it. That's my, but it's relative to me and a lot of women sitting there, the entrepreneurs, I did some research, like I do research all the time. And it is definitely one of the growing areas, the women. There's more entrepreneurs in their 50s starting businesses than men. So have your audacity. Who cares about your age? Yes, you've got wisdom and those experiences. A lot of people want them.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I knew you were going to hit me with something good with that. I love it. I love it. And it is, it doesn't matter on your age or anything, because it's never too late to start. The thing is you need to start. And that's a whole thing. And it's about audacity to just lean into it. I love it. I love it. Okay, Lisa, final thing. Is there one thing that you would love to leave our listeners with, a piece of advice or words of wisdom?
If you've got something in you and it's a story or it's something to offer others and it needs to come out, bring it out. Don't sit on it. Bring it out. And your fears, yes, as Angie mentioned, everyone has fears. Your fears change as you grow. So you're going to have fears all the time. Just step in, lean into it and say, yes, I resign.
I love that. I love that. Thank you, Lisa. This has been an incredible conversation. I know I've gotten a lot out of it, and I've had a lot of fun. It's beautiful listening to your story, and I get goosebumps when you're talking about things, because I can feel how you say things with such a strong conviction, and I love it. And I just admire the work that you're doing, and I think it's really, really cool. Where can our listeners, obviously we'll put all of your links and things in the show notes so people can reach out to you, but anything else, or where's best to contact you?
And main place at the moment, Recreate and Rise, is just about to launch a new community membership, which is what I've kind of worked out that they're after, and that's through the website of Recreate and Rise. So you're going to put the link down in that. And as for speaking opportunities, I do have Lisa Keevil. I do have a website available as well. So thank you, Angie, for having me. I've had so much fun. Can we do this again?
Yes, absolutely. I've been saying that to most of my guests. You know, it would be really cool to do one now and then in a year to see where things transpire to. Because,
Yeah.
I think it's cool. Absolutely, I would love
No,
to have you back on the
book me
show,
in. Thank you,
Lisa.
Angie. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for
All
listening
right.
as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.